welcome to today's show. I'm Jacqueline Stockwell, CEO and founder at Leadership Through Data. I inspire and motivate information leaders across the world.
Hello and welcome to today's show. I'm joined by Sheena Fisher. She's a governance manager for data contracting at East Anglia's Children's Hospice. She provides supporting services across Cambridge, Norwich and Suffolk. Sheena works at the intersection of data protection, trust and care in an environment where information governance really matters. EACH, which is the abbreviation of her organisation, supports children and families at some of the most vulnerable moments of their life. And Sheena's role is about ensuring privacy, dignity, and children's rights are built into everything the hospice does, from care delivery to fundraising and volunteering. What I love about Sheena's approach is that she goes beyond compliance. She focuses on making data protection practical, meaningful, and human, so people understand why it matters. It's not just about rules. So welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Jackie, for those kind words, and thank you for inviting me to be with you today. I feel it's an honour. So my role at EACH is I am fundamentally the data protection officer, and that includes protecting informative information and building trust to our service users, colleagues and volunteers, and anybody that shares any personal and sensitive data with the hospice. The core problems that I've encountered, and this isn't just at EACH, it's all across any organisation that I worked at as a data protection officer, is about ownership of data. It's not always policy driven, and sometimes it shouldn't be policy driven. The policies are there to support, but sometimes you have to, to me, it's the risk appetite across all service areas. The other thing that we are always protecting against is cyber threats, jeopardy of data, vulnerabilities. Those all come into data protection, and we're always sort of, trying to keep our head above the curve with all of that. In my experience, sort of risk grows quietly through sometimes, our information asset owners, that they have this as an aside in their job roles. So work overload, sometimes keep an eye on what they're doing as an information asset owner and their data. It can be sometimes unclear. The accountability of it can be unclear. And sometimes, as I said, with their workload, it can fall a bit down the pile.
So I'm really glad you brought up information asset owners, because it's quite a big topic within our industry. So when you first started, what was the reality of information asset owners within your organisation? Were they disengaged? Was it unclear? Did you have an amazing structure, or were they just stretched?
When I came into EACH, because we're split across tri-sites, it's not as if we're all in the one building, and this is my first experience of working across tri-sites like that. So it is just, when I came in, I sort of had to make a concerted effort to sort of understand how they all worked. And I must admit, this one of the organisations that do take information asset owners seriously as part of GDPR, and they do have this written into their job description, so it is something that they take ownership for. They care deeply about the personal sensitive data that they hold, because we all have to be compliant and duty confidentiality with whatever we do within health and care. A lot of it was that before I joined, they were left sort of managed as information asset owners. So I think they were sort of, to say running feral is a bit unfair, but they were sort of, doing what they thought was right. They just sort of were doing their best job, and I think they were sort of pleased when I came on board.
Nice.
And
so
they sort of, they had lack of support engagement previously as well.
So you gave them a bit of guidance. You kind of saw the lay of the land and then thought, right, okay, well, let's kind of progress this further, give them some guidance, give them support and get them engaged. So I really want to talk about, because we've been working together for probably about a year now, I think it is, around the engagement of your IAOs. So take me from the beginning, take listeners from the beginning as to what was your first move to get IAOs sort of leaning into you, and who did you start with and why?
Okay, so my first objective from my line manager was, because for those that work in the healthcare industry, you'll know that annually we have to complete a data protection security toolkit. And part of the attainment level on there is that you're doing DPIAs and, your house is in order with regards to data protection. So I started setting up across all service areas face-to-face meetings with the information asset owners so that I could understand what their DPIs are getting, what data they were sharing, what data they, what third-party platforms they were engaging with. And of course, in the charity sector, there's a lot of fundraising, so there's a lot of engagement with third parties there. So just get to know how all the cogs in the wheel functioned. I could also, from those face-to-face meetings, is ascertain where they were struggling. Their reaction to me as somebody that's come in with a lot of experience, I didn't want to start off with, them sort of think, okay, we've been on our own for a little while, somebody with experience is coming in, new brush sweeps clean. I wanted to build a collaborative working relationship, which I sort of talked to them, asked them what their sort of concerns were about their data risks, how they were sort of mitigating those, their struggles with their role, gaining their trust basically, and exposing my own vulnerabilities around my role, i.e. I don't always know all the answers.
And I think that's so important. Certainly when you get engagement, it's about building that relationship. And I do feel that the majority of our job as an information leader should be relationship building, because actually you can't get things over the line without building those relationships with people to do things for you. And that's exactly what you've described there. And I think that's such a great methodology.
Yeah.
So, talk about a little bit about you. So how did you feel when you were starting to do that outreach stuff with them? Like, did you target the most willing people first, or did you head to the areas where there was sort of more critical, skeptical people?
I think to me, fundamentally, it was the areas that were shared, sort of a lot of personal sensitive data that they were holding, i.e. the care teams, because we are predominantly about providing care and patient care. So I think I reached out to the care teams first and sort of met with them and got their understanding of, the systems that they're using, how they're collecting, how they're saving the data retention, all of those sort of conversations. And then I sort of went to the other big area, which was our fundraising area. And then I sort of went round the other sort of the volunteer data, the education data that the education suite use, HR, all of those teams. But I sort of thought my own self, I had to start where there was a bigger collection of data, should we say.
Nice. So I just want to probe a bit more in there, because what did you actually do to get them what message did you use to get to land, to get them to sort of sit up and listen? Was it around the risk that you talked about earlier? Was it around the value of the information that they hold? Or did you say, I've got a particular mission to deliver this?
It wasn't about risk. I mean, they identified what the risk is having all of that. I think it was to get their buy-in that, we were a sort of team on our own, even though I didn't manage them. And I explained to them, you are my ears and eyes on the ground. So, I can't be in all of these locations at once. They understand the importance of the data that they're using. They understand they're doing it all. I just think that they felt unsupportive. And I just sort of, it's that open door culture that they could come to me with any question, or if they just wanted to talk to somebody about it, that, open door policy. And I think from then, slowly but surely over the past year, because it's just over a year since I started at each, I'm just blown away by the engagement I have with the information asset owners, and that they do come to me with their questions. If they don't know the answer, they'll say to their team member, they go to their manager, ask Sheena. I said to them that the data protection role is there as an advisory capacity, as well as ensuring that the organisation's data is protected.
Yeah, great. So I just want to delve into that like a little bit more, because we'll talk about the story and all the amazing stuff that you've done to get where you are and what you've just described. But what did you actually say to them to make them care about what you needed to achieve, which made them care about, looking after that information, which has got you the outcome right now?
I think it was a case of this isn't sort of me sort of dictating to them what they have to do around data. There are laws, and there's and then, as they all know, there's the data protection, security and toolkit that we have to adhere to. So it's not really. Sometimes it can be thought of as a tick box exercise, but I think it was just sort of saying to them, yes, it is a tick box exercise, but I just want you to ensure that ensure me and our senior management team and our trustees that we are doing all we say we are doing to protect data.
Right. And I think that's more your approach then, building those relationships with them
Yeah.
as well, that
Yeah.
has then enabled them to actually care about what you're trying to achieve as well, and being that visible person, right, being more proactive rather than reactive. So I think it's great. So what did you put in place so it wasn't a one-off conversation that you had with them? How did you make the ownership of IAOs stick with them?
So what I did was earlier in this year, February, I put together a information asset owners workshop. And I wanted it to be engaging because, you can bring a group of people into room and thankfully they all know one another because we all work for the same organisation. But, if you send out an invitation to your colleagues to say, data protection information asset owners workshop, they sort of think, oh, what do you know, data, what's exciting about that? So I think fundamentally I wanted it to be an engagement day. I wanted them to go away feeling worthy and valued and empowered to go and do their role. So I sort of took them back to the basics really, and I got them to engage with me at the workshop about their struggles if they didn't understand something, and I make it light-hearted. And I also got our IT manager to come along, and he shares some valuable statistics with them about organizations that have been fined and things that sort of would resonate with managing data, cyber threats, those sort of things. I think they could understand what they were saying, but they said, we want a process. We would like you to give us a process of what you want us to do, particularly with the annual reviewing of what we call them an information governance risk assessment. So that is your DPIAs, it's your record of processing activities in there. And it was just sort of their biggest objection is we have to do this annually. Can we work together to make it slightly easier?
One of the biggest things that I find that people object about is that they say that information asset owner isn't their job. You said quite clearly at the start it's in their job description.
Yeah.
What is the one thing that you could offer a piece of advice if people are struggling with that kind of objection?
I think if it is in their job description, we've just been having an internal conversation about some of our information asset owners are really struggling with doing their annual review of their, risk assessments. And they are talking about handing the role down to an information asset administrator. I don't mind an information asset administrator taking on the roles or perhaps working with the information asset owner, but I think it is something that sits within a level of management within an organisation where they're accountable and take responsibility. So I think the biggest thing is if people are struggling with it, have it put in somebody's job description so that, I know it's a bit difficult to add it in if they're already in post, but if you're looking at reviewing roles or advertising for roles, put it in so there's no hidden, it's not in that anything in this job role that's expected of you, so they can sort of, when they're applying, know that that is expected of them.
Nice. And I'm all for magic mistakes.
Yeah.
What did you try that didn't work so listeners can avoid and not do it?
Work. I think it was trying to I've had to pace myself. I was keen when I got in to do my objective to do it within 6 months of me being within the role. It's taken me a year, and I think you've got to because I'm one person doing this role and I've got this responsibility. You think everybody else should be if I go to them and say, I want to do this, they're ready, willing and able. But I have to take into account that they're busy people. And I think it was just sort of slowly but surely getting the engagement And it was just sort of to starting off with, we've got to do this, we've got to fix this. I guess it's me, I was a bit edgy about what was going on. And I thought, with data and threats going on with cyber and anything like that, I just needed to be out there and ensure everything was as it should be. So trying to run too quickly, I think. So don't.
Nice. And then engagement. So what did you do in your workshop that you've never done before to get the engagement from the IAOs?
What did I do in my workshop? I did quizzes. I did, when they got the answers right, they went up the ladder, or if they got the answers wrong, they went down the snake. I made it fun. And I also knew that they were all of the same level in there. So I didn't, there's whoever wins gets a prize. I didn't sort of take one prize in. I took numerous prizes in the form of chocolates to everybody. So at the end of the day, everybody got chocolate at the end of it. Yeah. So it was just sort of to make it sort of engaging and, working together.
Yeah, and we worked together on that presentation, didn't you? And you tried out
Yeah.
some of the concepts that I've suggested. And what feedback did you get from
Very
them?
positive. Very positive. I sort of felt, as if I'd really achieved, because the IAOs were been giving positive feedback, not both just to me, but to our IT manager. They said we worked very well together. We delivered the workshop very well, very informative, very engaging, a two-way street.
Fantastic. And have you seen any good, better results as an outcome of that so far, if you've done a review?
Well, I've just been doing my annual reviews with each of them. And, when I do my reviews with them, they just said, we took away from what we learned at the workshop and we're going to do this. So, that's really heartwarming.
Amazing. And you should be so proud of yourself that you've done that and you've really got that engagement. So I want to talk a bit more about engagement and I want to talk about your elevating pitch. So
Okay.
we've been working together on the Empower program for a while now. And one of the key things is for me is that I want information leaders just like you, who's demonstrated how awesome you are, that when you walk into a room, you get authority and credibility when you're starting to talk. So tell me your elevator pitch, Sheena, that we've been working together on.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sheena. I'm the Governance Manager for Data, Contracting and Audit at East Anglia's Children's Hospices. We support children and families at incredibly vulnerable moments. So getting data protection right really matters. I make sure privacy, dignity and children's rights are built into everything we do, from care and family support to fundraising and volunteering. My role is about more than compliance. I help turn data protection into practical, trusted ways of working so the hospice can operate safely, ethically, and with integrity.
An elevated pitch is to just explain what we do, how we do it, and what we want to achieve.
So, hi, I'm Sheena. I help our colleagues take clear, not after something goes wrong. I work with service leads so they feel confident managing information as part of their service, not as an extra burden.
Nice. Done? Nice. Amazing. Well done. And I think that's really powerful for us to include that in the show today, that, you're feeling the importance of having that elevator pitch, aren't you? That you can introduce yourself in the business to really kind of make your stand as an information leader, so people can sit up and listen. So now what you need to do is learn it off by heart, Sheena.
Yeah.
And then say it with some conviction as you go forward. But I think it's sensational that you shared it with us and you've shared your vulnerability in doing that on today's show with the listeners. Just last thing, kind of question I want to ask you. There's been some real challenges in the UK, certainly around funding for training and education. One of the questions I want to ask you is, when you realised that your organisation wouldn't be able to pay for your professional development, what has made you invest in yourself?
Well, I guess if I want to influence, I need to take responsibility for my own personal development, and keeping up to date with data interrogation, ever-evolving world of data management. I've got to put myself out there to make sure that I'm keeping up to date, taking the opportunity to refresh on delivering change, taking responsibility for my own impact and, focusing on what the charity needs with regard delivering data protection across the board. So it's all about me wanting to be the best form of me that I can be. And if that meant me dipping my hand in my pocket and doing it, I was prepared to do that.
Nice. And what have you invested in?
Yeah, be bold, be brave, and be beautiful.
Nice, nice. And we've been working together on the Empower program, haven't we? The Leadership Through Data Empower program.
Yeah.
So, what's one of the investments that's paid off for you quickly, and what's changed in how you show up or influenced others because you've done this self-development yourself?
I think, I feel as if I've got more confidence. I'm not going to say, credible, because I know I'm credible anyway. And I know that I can influence, but it's just making sure it's that sense checking that, what I've been gaining through doing the Empower program, that I can deliver immediate practical solutions, feelings of empowering others and having the confidence to do that.
Amazing, sensational. So, Sheena, how can listeners reach out to you if they want to know any more about the amazing work that you've been doing, you've been talking about today?
Do you mean through each, or,
Well, I do through each because you're not on LinkedIn, are you?
you
You're
know,
on LinkedIn. I'll just take that question out. Let me just go on to the other one.
because
Okay,
you've got
ready?
there's some other questions. How did you decide what was worth spending money on?
Yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you one more question because we're just slightly over time. So I'm just going to
Okay.
shorten it. Okay. So if someone's listening about the information asset owner work that you've done and they need to engage them within the next month, what are your top 3 suggestions for them to execute straight away?
I would say show openness and honesty. At the same time, lead with purpose. Make ownership of being an information asset owner practical.
Nice. And what's one sentence you can tell anybody who's waiting for permission or funding to grow?
Invest by paying into your own personal development piggy bank and let the results speak for themselves.
I love that, Sheena. I love that. I love that. So if the listeners want to reach out to you, they can go direct via Reach. If they want to each, I can get that edited as well. Do really well there. Each. But thank you so much for your time today. It's been absolutely sensational. I wish you the continued best success going forward. Thank you for coming on the show and sharing all the positive things you've done and opening your vulnerabilities to your new elevator pitch, which I look forward to hearing and seeing you deliver that to me as we go forward together.
Hey, thank you very much, Jackie, for inviting me.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Journals of the Information Entrepreneur with me, Jacqueline Stockwell. I hope you found this episode inspiring and helpful and have some takeaway tips that can be useful to you. If you liked this episode, please like, review and share it with your friends. Your support helps us reach more information leaders to stay inspired and listen to great content. Want to test out your strengths and weaknesses and measure it against our Empower framework? Please complete the scorecard. It's a great way to improve and evaluate your skills. You can find the scorecard at the end of the description of this podcast. Stay tuned for a new podcast every Thursday, and remember to be bold, be brave and be beautiful.